I just love this station, and I definitely love Brother Rick Ford. So whenever he calls, guess what? I'm coming around. I'm coming around. Brother Rick is, by the way, if you're wondering, where is Brother Rick right now? Well, Brother Rick is at the reunion at the reservoir. The reunion at the reservoir, which is happening today at 33rd and Oxford at the Discovery Center. And look, I know that there's going to be a good time there. He is emceeing, and they couldn't be in better hands than to have Brother Rick Ford as our MC. So, Brother Rick, do your thing out there, brother. We miss you here, but do your thing there. And again, I am Nathaniel Lee, and I'm pleased to be your host, filling in for Brother Rick Ford. And don't worry, we have some interesting guests for you today, and we're going to start off. But first, I want to say this. There are a lot of things going on in our community. There are a lot of things. A lot of it is very bad. A lot of it is very bad. Some of you might know me from my segment, Tell Me Something Good, in which I tell about news briefs and events and bring you people who bring positive things to our community. But I wanted to say this. It's not all positive out there. There's a lot of bad, and I'd be remiss in my duties if I pretended to put blinders on and pretended that those things didn't exist. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. This is Recovery Talk 101, and we need to talk about recovery, not just recovery from substance abuse, but recovery from, and I'm hearing some static. If we can go on mute, until the time, I would appreciate it. But because I'm getting some static, but if we could just, if you would just, we have some guests coming up. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted there. But we have some guests that are coming up. We're going to talk about those problems. We're not just talking about recovery when we talk about when we're here on Recovery Talk 101. Of course, we're dealing with those who are coming from facing the plague of recovery from substance abuse of some sort, addiction of some sort. But we're also talking about recovery from other things, recovery from chronic illnesses. We're talking about recovery, communal recovery from the blights that's affecting our neighborhood. And so today we're going to talk about a little bit of both of those things. In the first half of our show, we have a young man here who from the Kirkbride Center. We all know the Kirkbride Center. Well, let me not assume that we all know the Kirkbride Center. And for those of you who don't, I am going to allow him to tell us about himself in a second and what the Kirkbride Center do and his role in it. But on the second half of the program, we also have something that's near and dear to my heart and near and dear to Brother Rick's heart. He's mentioned it on this show. He's mentioned it to me privately. And the city is talking about it. And we're talking about what's going on in the area of Kensington. Kensington, hard hit by the opioid crisis, hard hit. I mean, people defecating in public on the streets, people finding syringes and shooting themselves up with drugs right there, broad daylight, not even waiting till the evening. So when you talk about the opioid addiction in Philadelphia, there's no greater manifestation of that addiction or the consequences of that addiction and what it can lead to than in the area of Kensington. So we're going to have two people that's coming to the rescue, two people whose heroic efforts to help restore, replace, rebuild the Kensington area for the residents and the people there, but also for the people negatively impacted by the opioid addiction and other addictions that are taking so much, turning our people into zombies, I would say, I hope I'm not out of line, but literally turning people into zombies who living in ways outside of themselves. So that's going to be on the second half of our show. But first, let's just say thank you to our esteemed producer, Mike Celestine, because he is the best. So thank you, Mike. And we're going to go straight to our first guest, Brother Bajir Patil of the Kirkbride Center. Are you on the line with us now? And if so, could you please introduce yourself to our listeners? Brother Patil, are you out there of the Kirkbride Center?
Yes.
And oh,
Yes.
great.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you well, and I knew you were there, and I can see you as well. First of all, Brother Bajir, just for our listeners now, we know you're here in Philadelphia, but I'm hoping we have listeners all over the world right now. So if you would please be kind enough to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yes, sure. So I'm Bajira Patil. I work as a clinical director for Kirkbride Center in Philadelphia. We are located in West Philly, 111 North 49th Street, Philadelphia 19139. Our phone number is 215-471-2600. We are 302 bed inpatient program. We also have outpatient program now. So we have detox. We detox patients from alcohol and benzo addiction. We also have methadone maintenance program. We have long-term program that's called 3C. So mostly our patients stay there. If they are for short-term program, they stay there for 30 days or around 30, 45 days. Then if they stay for long-term trauma program, they are anywhere between 90 to 120 days. Then for detox, they are there for 3 to 7 days. Then we have outpatient program. So that we just started 2 months ago. I'm also clinical director for that outpatient program. I have written a couple of books on addiction. One of my books is Insanity Beyond Understanding, and then another one is Lifelong Sobriety: How to Stop Drinking and Using Drugs. I also head my own counseling center called Arohi Counseling. I see patients either with insurance or private there.
Well, let's start with the Kirkbride Center. Then I would definitely want to go into your books and the contents of it, as well as the counseling center, which you also participate in. The Kirkbride Center, for those who may not have been, you mentioned you have a number of beds. So for people who, let's say they're out there and they need assistance, just describe how the Kirkbride Center operates, how they help those who are in need of addiction. I mean, who not in need of addiction, in need of recovery from addiction.
Sure. So our referrals come from mostly from crisis centers, but we also take walk-ins. So some people just walk in. Also, other programs like a community outreach programs, they also bring people to us or they call us. Our admission is open 24/7, Monday to Sunday. Anytime we get clients, we take them. We also assess them, or the crisis center assesses them and sends them. In the past, they needed authorization to come in. Now they don't need auth. They can just come in and we can get them auth later. So we assess them whether they need detox, if they are going through any withdrawal symptoms such as aches, pains, cramps, nausea, sweat, chills, whatever. We take care of that. If they don't and they need only rehab, then we place them in rehab. So that being said, once they stay there for 30 days or whatever days they want to stay, and then we assess them for another level of care. So that could be either they go outpatient or they stay inpatient for long term.
Now, Brother Patil,
Yes.
now I got two questions for you. Number one, are you now working part-time as an Uber driver or what? What's going on there?
I'm so sorry. No, I'm not working part-time as a driver. I had to come to see a family here. So my friend is driving and I'm behind here.
I see. Okay, I'm only kidding with you. I just thought
I know. I like that, buddy. We are friends, and if you don't kid with me, who else will make me laugh? That was very nice of you.
You're so welcome. And the invoice will be in the mail, by the way. But Brother Patil, now let's say some people walk up to the they are in need of help, and I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but if not, let's say they are in need of help. They finally decided that, look, I can't stay out here. I'm addicted. I need help. But they don't have any type of insurance or anything. Do you accept them too? Do they need some type of insurance, or you just accept them?
We accept them. So see now, Rick heads that BHSI. Those who don't have insurance, they will help them to get insurance later, and we also have to get the insurance. So we take them too. Yes, we don't turn down anyone because they need help. As long as they're seeking help, we will find the ways out to help them.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. In the second half of our program, we'll be talking about the blight, the situation in Kensington, which I'm sure you're
Yes,
very familiar with.
sure.
As a professional, have you seen, since the opioid crisis has really escalated, have that increased your numbers here in West Philadelphia as well?
Yes, yes, a lot. Because the problem is, these days people have been using either K2 a lot, or other synthetic drugs, and too many deaths in our Philly also have taken place in recent time, because everything is like sprayed with fentanyl, and fentanyl is too dangerous drug. So even if they are doing marijuana, it may be sprayed with fentanyl. If they are doing something else, it's still sprayed with it. So the problem is, it has been a real bad year for us, and we do get patients. Number of patients has been increased, but that's not our goal. We would rather have people in recovery than do drugs.
Mhm. I want people to really understand, because a lot of times people think that there's this push to legalize. Well, it's not a push. It's largely legalized. If nothing else, is decriminalized, and I'm talking about, of course, marijuana. And so people feel as though it's okay to buy off the street, it's safe, and et cetera. Is no longer criminalized. But there are such things as what you said, it was fentanyl,
Yes.
laced in those drugs, which can make them dangerous. Am I correct? And can you further expand on that and what fentanyl does?
Sure, because it's very dangerous. It doesn't. I mean, even the medications such as methadone or even Suboxone doesn't really help it. They go through severe withdrawal symptoms from fentanyl, and they can die, because it's the problem is, it's mixed with everything, and people don't know what is mixed with what. The people who are making these drugs or selling these drugs, they mix anything with anything. You just don't know. In the past, if you were buying heroin, it would be heroin. If you were buying crack or cocaine, it would be crack or cocaine. Now that's not there. Now people got to understand, everybody out there is to make money. Nobody cares about whether you live or you die.
Mhm.
So if you don't care, why do they care? So it's only you who has to care. You can't expect people to care for you, and you don't care.
Where do you stand on the legalization of marijuana, as far as, and the reason I'm stating that is because, I got this real thing against drugs, so I'm biased of drugs of any type if it's not medicinal, and I'm not talking about medicinal. I'm talking about for recreational use only. If it's medicinal, you need what you need, take what you need to get well. But for those who use it recreationally, what do you think about new efforts now to legalize it?
Great
As
question. Great
Mhm.
question. See, legalization is good for anything and everything if they are legalizing. But the problem, misuse of it. Now even the people who have little bit anxiety, or don't have real anxiety, or little bit in some kind of a pain, they go to the doctors and get the card, and
Mhm.
they keep getting high on marijuana. And marijuana, as long as people in recovery, they will, AA and NA will always tell you or teach you, marijuana is a drug. And there have been people who just use marijuana and still get high. It's not like you don't get high. There have been people who use marijuana, cause an accident, and ended up killing someone.
Mhm.
The people who are smoking marijuana, they neglect their children because they are busy smoking marijuana.
Mhm.
So just alcohol was legalized. What happened? There are so many alcoholics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would
And
marijuana, legalization of marijuana do? But it's a big industry. There are farms. People make money having that marijuana field.
Mhm.
So
Ev- everything makes money except sobriety, right?
exactly, and sobriety gives you life.
Mhm.
The
And-
best thing about sobriety keeps you sane, because addiction makes you insane. That's
mhm.
the thing. People would rather be insane than become sane. That's the trouble there.
Mhm. And Brother Patil, I always tell people, because Oh, by the way, word listeners, Brother Matil and our producer, Mike Celestine, I have crossed the 1 year anniversary of being a vegetarian, by the way. So I just thought I'd throw that in. It has nothing to do with our conversation. But I say that because being someone who's basically eat a plant-based diet, I talk about sometimes people will come to me and they'll say, well, marijuana is a plant, and some drugs come from plants. And I always tell them and I use the biblical example, how in the Bible, all of the fruits of the trees of the garden we were allowed to eat, but there was one tree that we weren't allowed to eat, and whatever it was, it changed our consciousness. It changed the consciousness of man. And all plants I don't eat. You know, there's certain fungi, there's certain plants that are natural, they're organic, but I don't eat. And I wanted you to speak to that, how there are some things that grow out of nature, and they're drugs, and they change our consciousness and they alter our minds. And just because they're organic or grown, they're not necessarily that good for us to consume. What's your opinion on that?
So my opinion is like a drug is a drug.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that's altering your moods, it's a drug. Anything that's causing you problems in your life, we got to avoid. We got to restrain our feelings or desire to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people, there are support systems. People like Rick, for example, they are out there to help people. The problem is nobody wants to work hard to stop.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about, their immediate gratification. So if you are focused on immediate gratification, you're not going to do well. It doesn't have to be drugs only. It can be gambling, it can be sex addiction, anything for that matter. So.
No, please continue.
No, you go ahead. You wanted to ask something.
Yeah, I was going to ask, when it comes to that, when people come to the Kirkbride Center, and I know there are a number of centers, a number of different treatment facilities out there. The Kirkbride Center is renowned for what it does. But what is different from it than others of its kind?
Very good. Very good. One difference we can see, I don't want to boast. If you look at my own profile, you'll see how different we are. So like my qualification as well as my experience. So I heard clinical stuff. All our clinicians are well-trained, well-educated. We are a client-centered treatment center. We make sure that clients have the say in their treatment process. We are not the one who dictate the treatment. They are the one who would be telling us what needs to be done for them, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. Also, we have all medically assisted treatment protocols, such as we have methadone, we have Suboxone, we have Vivitrol. Also, we have non-medically assisted program for people with crack cocaine addiction or alcohol addiction. And we also make sure that we have psychiatrists on the site. We have 3-4 psychiatrists there. We have psychologists there. We have MSW counselors. We don't even hire for counseling people with bachelor's degree. Most places have people with bachelor's degree also. We don't do that. When I'm talking about that, I would also like your listeners to know this. We have several positions open. We are looking for master's level counselors. We are looking for RNs. We are looking for LPNs. But most importantly, we are looking for recovery coaches with high school diploma. If they have GED or high school diploma, we can hire them. We are also looking for behavioral health techs, high school diploma plus 10 college credits. Mm-hmm. If we have that, we can hire them also. And then we just need people with a desire to help other people. And we prefer recovering people to help our clients.
Well, you heard it right there, word listeners. You heard it right here on Recovery Talk 101. They are hiring at the Kirkbride Center. And that's why I always tell you, you might, even when I'm on my segment, Tell Me Something Good, or wherever you hear me at, bring something to write with and or something to write on, because you're going to pick up some good information. So, Brother Patil, I'm looking for people to call you. And we're going to give you information out in a second. But there's something you said that I really want to elaborate on a little more. Because so many treatment centers do dictate the treatment. They tell the client what they need and how they need it. And you just mentioned that at the Kirkbride Center, that the patients tell you what they need. Right. And so I want you to elaborate on that, because that's revolutionary. That's very progressive in the treatment and recovery area. So how do the patients tell you what they need, and how do they direct their own treatment?
Sure. So it's a client-centered treatment. So let's say our psychiatrist may think somebody needs, say, Seroquel medication, but then the patient tells, no, that doesn't work for me, but something else works for me. Then the doctor cannot keep insisting on prescribing something that he thinks will work. You have to listen to patient, and patient knows better. Patient is the best advocate for themselves. You know, of course, certain things that they can be off the track, off the road, but then you can redirect them, right? But there are many things they know. So if patient says, oh, you know what, for anxiety, this medication really doesn't work for me. This makes me tired. This makes me sleepy. But the other medication makes me okay. I function better. Let's go with that. But there will be times certain patients will say, oh, I want to be on the dose of 200 milligrams of methadone. Then we got to talk to those patients saying that's a too large dose. We won't do that. We'll go with a 5 milligrams at a time and see how you do at 70 or 80, and we'll take it from there. But we're not going to give you just 200 milligrams because you want 200 milligrams. Because that's like trying to get legal high.
And tell me a little more about your outpatient work. How do the Kirkbride Center, what do your outpatient efforts consist of?
Okay, great. Outpatient, actually, we just started 2 months ago. Not 2 months ago, a month ago. So I am a clinical director there also. I manage outpatient. So we are currently taking only our own clients, the ones that we initiated on methadone maintenance. So we are not taking anybody from outside yet, but we will definitely take them in a month or two. So what we do is, ours is not like a IOP, it's an outpatient program. So being outpatient program, we do group once a week, that is on Tuesday, and we do individual sessions once a week. And so our clients come there 7 days a week. On Monday to Friday, they come at 9 o'clock to get dosed, and then on Saturday, Sunday, they come at 8 o'clock to be dosed. So that being said, our clients also there, we try to help them all 5 days with therapy, actually, even though it is not required, but we try to give them more than they really need. So as long as they are willing to stay there, I stay with them for every day 1 hour. And it is more than required.
Are you ready for the big question? Because this is an opinion question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask, you know, there was a big thing, and this is in reference to Kensington as well, the issue in Kensington as well. And there was a safe injection site proposal with which they would have a place where people on opioids, where they could go and, I guess, consume their drugs, their injections, I guess, quote unquote, safely, where there would be clinicians there just in case they overdose and et cetera. And that caused a big controversy, a big split throughout the city, where most people I know were against it, but some were for it. I would like to know, as a professional in the field, and having been a professional for quite some time, do you have an opinion on that? I think the plan is virtually dead, almost dead, but what do you think about such things, so-called safe injection sites?
It's a harm reduction, approach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for people who are chronically addicted and not able to. They are saying that they cannot stop, but they can reduce some of it. They want to continue getting high. It's a little bit like in addiction field. It's a liberal thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people who advocate for it. There are people those now people like AANA, they will never agree with it
Mm-hmm.
because for them it's not a right thing. Whereas some professionals who are quite liberal in thinking, they want this to happen. They want these people to be able to go and get safely high. But the problem is you don't know what is safe and what is unsafe. You
Mm.
don't know if they will be able to really save the person or not. You don't know when they are little high here. You don't know later on if they can get little high here, they leave that spot and get high somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally, my opinion, even though I'm not so like rigid, I wouldn't go for that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into harm reduction. I'm in complete abstinence. I'm like AA and NA people.
Mm-hmm.
12
I
steps
like that.
program.
Absolutely. Speaking of the 12-step program, which have been, I guess, for many people at work, it has had like it has changed the treatment in America as we know it. Tell us why steps like that, the 12 steps work as opposed to maybe um, other type of programs that exist. What
Right.
is it?
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's something called smart recovery program.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is smart recovery is based on rational emotive behavioral therapy. Whereas so there that approach is also very good because it has a therapy approach. Whereas 12 step is not really therapy, but it also works for many people. Thousands of millions of people have been able to stay sober if they work 12 steps. So we cannot deny their importance either.
Mm-hmm.
But those people who don't like 12 steps, they can always go for smart recovery. And
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, all these meetings are online. They were always online anyway. They weren't doing the regular meetings, I believe, but they always were online. And people there are more. They at least they think they are more rational because it's based on rational emotive behavioral therapy. So you can see that. So those people who who think they are more intelligent, they need better discussions and all. So they go there. So that's a good alternative to 12 steps.
Thank you very much. I picked up a few things from you. I learned a few things, so I really appreciate that. See, listeners, word listeners, when you listen to me, when you listen to Recovery Talk 101, you're going to take some things with you. But Brother Mattel, I can't let you go without saying one more time. If people out there, our listeners, our viewers, people on Word TV, people listening on the radio or online, if they wanted to know more, if they needed help, they wanted somebody to talk to, how can they reach you guys?
Yes, they can go on our website, kirkbrightcenter.com, or they can also call 215-471-2600. As I also said, our location is very easy. It's 111 North 49th Street, Philadelphia 19139.
Hmm. Say your phone number and address just one more time, just for people who were a little slow getting to the ink pen.
Sure. Our address is Kirkbride Center, 111 North 49th Street, Philadelphia 19139. Our phone number is 215-471-2600. 215-471-2600.
It's been a pleasure having you, and we can't wait too long before we do this again. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, have you
Okay.
arrived at your destination yet?
Yes, we are there.
Okay, well, thank you. You have a
Thank
blessed
you.
day, and I'll
I'm in
talk to you.
Washington, D.C. today.
Wow, Washington, D.C.? All right,
Right.
go give him
Thank
hell.
you.
Tell the president I said hello.
Okay. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.
All right. And Word Family, that was Brother Bajir Patil of the Kirkbride Center. And look, hey, he dropped some information on us about what they do, a little bit about addiction, a little bit about treatment, and his opinion in the treatment and what they do there. And we really appreciate it. But as I promised you, we're going to talk about some of the things that are happening in Kensington right now. Kensington, which has so much negative press, so much negative media, and rightfully so. Rightfully so, because whenever a community is that hard hit and a devastation that severe, we need to talk about it. And there's no positive way of talking about it. But let me say this: there are some positive things happening as a result. And as I promised at the beginning of this show, we have two people on the line today that is going to share some of the positive things that are happening in a very negative situation. And if you ask me, people like this, efforts like this are heroic, and the people who engage in them, who facilitate them, direct them, envision them, they rightfully should be considered heroes. But that's just my personal opinion. But we have here Ashley Alfure Edwards of AFE Strategies Inc. And we have Joanna Atera Cruz, Deputy Manager Director of the city's Community Services Department. And first of all, I want to say thank you both. Do I have you on the line?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi. Ashley.
You're live.
Thank you for having us this evening.
What? Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And just so our listeners will know, this isn't our first time speaking, because I did a story for the University City Review, a newspaper, in which this was the topic. And it so captivated me, especially since what's going on in Kensington. I've received so much news that I said I have to write about it. So I reached out to our publishers and said, look, we have to cover this story, and they agreed. It was something that we needed to write. So let's start with Ashley. Ashley, first, could you introduce yourself and tell us what it is that's happening in Kensington? And then I'm going to ask Ms. Otera Cruz to do the same, and talk about her role in that thing that's happening.
Great. Hi. So my name is Ashley Foyer Edwards. I have a company, AFE Strategies, and I have been working with Joanna and her team in the managing director's office for about 2 years now, really to help identify opportunities for more resources to be directed into the Kensington community as it's been grappling with the impacts of the opioid crisis. And so I started working with her a couple years ago to really think about how do we go about doing this. And through our work, we ultimately envisioned having a pool fund that would bring significant amounts of dollars from the philanthropic community and foundations directly into the community to be available for organizations on the ground. And we also envision that to have what's called a participatory grant-making process, where it would really involve community members both deciding what should be funded and ultimately in our process making the grant-making decisions, which we feel so excited about that we were able to realize that. So that's been my role, is really project managing and fundraising and helping to kind of design and envision some of that work. Although Joanna has been working so much in the community, so I'll let her introduce herself and talk more broadly about Kensington, because she's really steeped in the community there.
Absolutely. So, Ms. Otera Cruz, could you introduce yourself and tell us who you are? And we know who you are, but but for those who may be living under a rock somewhere.
Well, thanks again for having me, Joanna Otero Cruz, and I serve as the Deputy Managing Director of Community Services for a city, and it just really truly affords me an opportunity to stay engaged with community, with residents, and listen to them with regards to what their needs are. And as you've already mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of our residents are really grappling with a lot of social ills in Kensington that are impacting their day-to-day, quality of life in their homes. And so we have been meeting with community residents, civic leaders in that community throughout my tenure in this administration, so since 2016, working with them around what needs to be addressed. And so this opportunity was something that, again, we wanted to ensure that it was really built and designed by community members. And I think that is someone, born and raised in Kensington, Fairhill section of the city myself. It definitely was something that I was very, really happy to be a part of, to ensure that every step of the way where the decision-making points took place, that it was really led by community members. They are the, expert content of their area, and so to really do things differently, we wanted to do that. We really had to let them lead the process. And so my role has been convening people, bringing people together, making sure we get the funding for it, making sure we take, the administration moving forward with the concept and the framework of the participatory grant-making process. Everything from, leading the steering committees and making sure that the community advisory committee, that it's all made up of community members, and participating in some of those tough conversations. Lots of decisions that had to be made to finalize what the framework would look like, and also identifying what are those themes, right? There are many social ills that are impacting community members in the community, so they really had to decide what they wanted to focus on. So being part of the process along the way, making sure that if there are any barriers along the way, that I was able to kind of untangle them a bit was my role.
Well, that's a big role to play. And when I spoke to Ms. Fiora Edwards about this event and all that it took, not events, but this process and all that it took to make it happen, I was so impressed. But there's something you said that I just want to, it generates a new question. Like you said, you grew up in the Kensington area, and what was it like growing up then? And tell me, as someone who is native to the area, have deep roots in the area, what is it like seeing what it has become now?
That's an excellent question, one that I get asked often. And, Kensington, Fairhill section, East of us, there's so many names to it, right? We even have a book written about it, right? Southern Indiana. That was exactly where I'm born and raised. And it's always been a tough area. I have to say that it saddens me to see it in the conditions that it is, because I do know the number of efforts that have taken place to change it at different points in time, right? What stands out to me always is the resiliency of our people in our community and how they thrive in the midst of really chaos. And so, I feel a sense of obligation and responsibility that we have to do better for our residents. Because they're hardworking people, and just like everyone else, they want to get home and retreat and recharge for the night, right? And have access to public spaces to spend some time with their children and feel safe that their kids are going to walk to and from school or their recreation centers, and so on and so forth. So for me, it is personal, but I know I don't stand alone with that, because we, as a administration and everyone who's been involved, everybody from philanthropy to other residents, we all have that common mission that we want to do better for our residents and our children, who are our future.
We have a caller on the line, and Rosalind out of Kensington. But before we go, to Rosalind, I just want to ask you guys, because I want the people to really understand, because of the shortage of time. I want people to understand when we talk about the Kensington Resilience Grant, how much are we talking, and who will be the recipients of this grant?
Yes.
And I don't mean individually recipients. I mean, when I say who will be,
Right.
what type of groups, organization, or individuals will be the recipients?
Sure. So I can kick it off and ask if you want to add to it. But
Sure.
you know, the community advisory committee, which was made up of residents of Kensington, Fairhaven, and Harrogate, decided that we would have $10,000 grants to different nonprofit organizations. But if they were not a 501c3 nonprofit, that they could still, so a small group doing work in Kensington, in Harrogate, or in Fairhill, so they designated their geographical area. As long as they had a fiduciary agent that would, be their fiduciary, and their admin, they could definitely apply. So you have also smaller grassroots, faith-based organizations that perhaps aren't incorporated, they could apply, and individuals too doing work. So that was also very distinct for this type of grant. And so what individuals had to do was submit an application to tell us about their project, tell us about their history in the work in the geographical area, and they had to address one of the themes. It was like public safety and gun violence, youth development, workforce development and training, beautification and blight removal projects, connecting residents to resources, and so they had to identify what are those areas, the categories that their program or project is going to fund. And then we were able to provide 20 different organizations with $10,000 grants. So the first phase was $200,000, and we hope to. We're working on a phase 2, which will be later this year.
Mm-hmm. With that, I don't want to leave a caller on the line burning with a question in her heart. So Rosalind from Kensington on line 1, welcome to Recovery Talk 101.
Yes, praise the Lord, and to your guests too on WURD Radio. I'm calling in reference to, I live in the area. I hear you talking about these grants and everything, but I deal with the people hand on hand. I'm disabled, but I provide like tall people, so clothes, give them resources where they can go, food, everything. A lot of these people refuses to go in recovery to get some help, but I have been able to get a lot of people to go to ACE and Geron and get their COVID-19 shot. Is there any way that we can get somebody to get down here and put some trucks down here to give these people their shots, to guide them where to go to help these people get off the street? And I'm not just talking about the drug dealers and what's going on with the what you call it, they put in the reefer and all that kind of stuff and everything. These people is messed up, and they getting raped and so much happening. I might be babbling, but I'm out here with them. I see it. And the fire departments, the houses are burning down because they smoking crack and everything. One person in one community only can do one thing. What I was told when I moved down here a year ago or 2 years ago, this was society here. Certain ethnic and nationalities wasn't even allowed. Now, when you see all these drugs going on down here with homeowners and you're not able to move them, why? Is the system so bad that they don't want to go in recovery to get help? When I know when I came through, it was help there, and now we got all this money and all these resources and begging them to get them home. But yet I also hear WURD saying, Solomon said, it's like we're able them by giving them tents and giving them this to stay where they are. What do we do to cut it?
Rosalind,
That's
I'm going to
all
let
I'm
them.
saying, sis. Because it's violent and it's bad, and they shooting up on the corners. I'm around security, so
Well,
I'm
Rosalind, we're short
around
on time, but
continuity.
I want you to
it's
stay. I
still
want you
coming
to,
on the corner,
Rosalind.
broad daylight, shooting up.
Rosalind, we're going to let them answer that question. I don't mean to cut you off, but because of the shortage of
Okay,
time, I
yeah,
want them to
I
get a
know I'm
chance.
babbling, but I just wanted to
No,
get
no,
them
you're
out.
not babbling at all. Actually, I think you raised a very good point. I just wanted them to have an opportunity to answer it before we have to.
Hang up. Thanks for taking my call. Everyone,
No,
please,
thank you for calling and thank you for the
we
work
have
that you
to
do in the
do it
community.
together. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So, did Ashley or Joanna or Tara Cruz, did any of you want to address that?
Yeah, first of all, to Ms. Rosalind, I definitely empathize with how frustrated she is. We definitely hear that often. And I want to be cognizant of time. We do have many treatment providers doing a lot of work down there and many efforts, including outreach. And she's right. There are many people that do refuse services. And we're not in a position where we can mandate treatment. There is, obviously behavioral health services and addiction services are constantly looking at what are different methodologies or programs that can be offered and what can be done differently. And I know that they're working very closely with our law enforcement and some of the efforts that, like the diversion program that was just implemented there, or expanded, I should say, just recently. So they are looking at, and we would love to come back with the appropriate folks, to talk about some of those programs if you like. But it is not a 1, 2, 3, and people can be forced out. And so while again, we just recently posted, I know there will be a cleanup, with some of the encampments. But unfortunately, as many people in the community know, they'll move to a different location. So we have to work with law department as well. So it gets a little perplexed, but we totally empathize with her frustration, and we agree that this is not okay and that we have to do better. And there are, as I mentioned, new strategies and programs that are being looked at to see if we can do things differently.
And what I really liked about this effort, this Kensington Relief Grants and the processes that you guys utilized in making all of this happen, was that it was unusual. And I've been reporting for quite a while, and I'm also a member of the community myself. So there's a lot of shop talk that goes on in the community as well, when you hear the opinions of the public. When there's nobody around that can censor them. And there's a lot of frustration with grants and how grants are distributed. And when grants are distributed, the small individuals can hardly access them. But what I like about this was that it was a participatory grant-making process where the community was purposely included in every aspect, seemed to me, in every aspect of what was to be done with the grants, who would get the grants, etc. And I love that. And you even made a part, as I believe it was Ashley Fiore Edwards said, made it so that they decided how those grants would be distributed. And it was just, I'll just say this, it was just inclusive. Tell me about this, how rare that is in your opinion. How rare is it that this participatory grant process was made so extensive?
Yeah, well, I can start, Joanna, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So, my background, I've been working in the kind of philanthropic space for a while. I worked with an organization called Philanthropy Network Greater Philadelphia for many years. So I've kind of seen sort of like the trends in philanthropy. And I think, this has definitely been something that's been picking up some steam. And I think there's, fortunately, it's really great to see that I think many more funders are more open to engaging the community in their work and to having those voices represented. I think that's definitely a movement I will say, though, that I think a lot of them tend to kind of stop at the level of, I think what's more common is seeing philanthropy, maybe a foundation saying, hey, we want to consult with our grantee organization, so the nonprofits that we're funding. We want to have them come to the table and help us through our strategic planning, or help us sort of design our grant programs, or think about what we should be funding or how we should be funding. And I think all that is really just a wonderful, sea change. But what is far less common, I will say, is taking it to the level that we did of actually having residents be grant makers. And there are some great funds out there that actually are having that do have more residents in that process. There's a COVID-19 relief fund that is engaging sort of more at the community level in the grant making. And one of our key funders, the Scattergood Foundation, they were part of this community fund for wellness, and they actually they have the organizations that they fund are the grant makers as well in that process. But I don't know that many that have really been done in this sort of hyper-local, place-based way, where we really brought this pool of funds directly to this community and said, we're going to listen to the residents, and, we provided a facilitator to help sort of, guide them and support them and give them training so they knew what they were doing. But, I mean, I've been in philanthropy a long time, and they ask all the right questions, all the same questions that I've heard grant makers ask and think about. They knew exactly what to do. They knew exactly what needed to be funded, and they have, their own great, conversations about how to prioritize the pool of funds that they had, and, really wanting to make sure that it was going directly to the community, and that any organization who would be funded, that they could be sure that that organization was going to have the dollars supporting their fellow neighbors. So, I think there is a lot more movement towards it, but ours, I would say, is pretty unique in that it, really gave residents all of the power to decide who was going to be funded.
Look, we have 1 minute left, and I just want to thank you both in that time for not only the work that you do, but also being our guests and sharing it with our listeners. But I'd be remiss in my duties if I did not ask, who are some of the sponsors and funders of this? We need to give them accolades and just say thank you for funding this magnificent cause. Who are some of the funders? Anyone?
Do you want to share, Joe?
I don't want to.
I'm sorry, I lost everyone. Well, I'm going to go on with our announcements. And first of all, we're going to say thank you for Ashley Fiora Edwards of AFE Strategies, Inc., and Joanna Otera Cruz, the Deputy Managing Director of Community Services. Thank you both for being our guests on Recovery Talk 101 and the wonderful work you're doing. And, by the way, stay tuned for Recovery Idol's next event. Recovery Idol's next event will be August 5th at 6 p.m. August 5th at 6 p.m. at 1701 Lehigh Avenue. I believe we're down to 6 contestants. Look, they're singing their hearts out. There's a lot of talent there. Brother Rick Ford and the First Lady of Recovery herself, they're doing a wonderful job out there. If you have any questions about Recovery Idol's next event, which again, August 5th, give Derek Ford a call. And with that, thank you very much. And I'll see you next time.